This week in games, there's a Greek God of War game in the works, video game developers unionize, and accessibility is on the forefront of progress. This is the Two Penny Gamescast. What's poppin', players? Welcome back to the Two Penny Gamescast, episode 244. I am your host, Tavin Bothel, here with my good friend and co-host. Say hello to the people, Connor Elliott.
Hello on this beautiful Monday afternoon / coming up on evening to your beautiful Tuesday morning or afternoon or evening, depending on when you watch this on Tuesday.
Smooth. Very smooth. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Two Penny Gamescast. Each week, me and Connor come to you with the nerdy news you need to know concerning the video game industry. We each come to you with two pennies, two topics, two pennies, if you will, and we give you our 2 cents on them. You can catch the show live, except for this week, every Monday afternoon over at twitch.tv/2pennygames, or catch it later on youtube.com/@2pennygames or mainstream podcast services of your choice, Tuesday, 8 a.m. Central Time. Connor, how's your week been, friend?
Let's see. It's been good. Very
good.
Crazy things have happened.
Such as?
You'll have to think about that. Or what could have happened that was crazy? Find out.
Okay.
Find out in your mind.
Okay. All right, Sure. Yeah, I've had a busy week. I started my second job this week, and then, that school and doing all this. I don't know why I keep putting things on my plate. Something's got to come off, and hopefully it will soon, but not for probably a few weeks. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it today. We're going to jump into
What about our preamble?
I did all the preambles.
But what about a preamble to after the preamble? Like, the unofficial preamble. Like, hey, what do you think about so-and-so and doing this and that, Or whatever conversations we happen to have.
I did have something loaded before we started the recording, but, we've done a piggy bank recording since then, which will be out Saturday morning, so make sure you subscribe for that. And I don't remember what my little starter thing was. So instead, I'm going to go ahead and jump to topic number 1, my first penny of the day. A God of War side project rumored to be in the works. This is, of course, written by our very own Connor Elliott. Over at Substack, TwoPennyGamesNews.substack.com. You can find all of the stories that we read here on the podcast. Make sure you subscribe over there. Take a read and a gander for yourself. Sony is reportedly creating a new side story project in the Greek setting of the God of War franchise, according to Giant Bomb's Jeffrey Grubb. Responding to his own post on Blue Sky concerning a prior rumor that a remaster collection would be unveiled during God of War's 20th anniversary, Grubb reports that the side project will be potentially showcased at a later date. Quote, I was never told about a remaster collection, but I asked a source about the rumors that I saw were focused on a collection, and they told me that nothing God of War would happen at the State of Play, but something could show up at the anniversary, Grubb posts in a reply. While the showcase didn't contain an announcement, a reveal at a yet-to-be-scheduled State of Play might substantiate the speculations. Sony had previously canceled a God of War live service game from Bluepoint in January of this year.
So this is a very bare bones story.
It is, yes. But there's a couple other things to pull here. I looked it up. The God of War anniversary is March 22nd. So we're recording this on the 24th. So the actual anniversary has come and gone. The only thing that they've done is I think they've put out like some merch that you can buy and so forth, and they've put out some skins and different customizable stuff in God of War Ragnarok that you can equip when you can have Kratos have a cool like black and gold skin, and then the weapons have skins, and then Freya and Atreus have skins that you can go in and equip in the game now. So that's fun for those who are into it. Connor, there have been rumors of a God of War remaster collection, I want to say, for years. At least for like the last 2 years, I want to say. This is just something that pops up in the rumor mill, disappears, comes back, goes away, comes back, goes away. So I don't know if they're I don't know if it's real. I don't know if it's a thing that's happening. I assume it is, just because it's been in the rumor mill so much that it's happening, and it's a more substantiated rumor and a more realistic thing to happen than say like a Bloodborne remaster. I think it just makes sense to put out at least the first 3 God of War games in some sort of remastered collection, especially because the new series that they're telling with the Norse mythology is still rooted in that Kratos. That's the same Kratos from the Greek games. And so now I got to look at what Jeff Grubb is saying here, where he's saying, hey, doesn't seem like the remastered collection is happening yet. He says specifically on Blue Sky, I quote, I think that those God of War remaster rumors just jumped the gun a little bit. That stuff will happen closer to this. I assume he's talking about
the anniversary
or something like that. And then he goes, okay, and then he doubles back and says, okay, there's a new side story project coming later this year is what he's saying. Now, whether it comes this year or next year, that's for higher powers to decide on for that, right? Like if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. My thing about it is that I do believe it is happening. I do believe it's a thing. Jeff Grubb, known video game insider, we've reported on his breaking news and different stories that he's done numerous times. And I fully believe that he's on the money here, that there's something coming. I do believe it's a game. I think he did later confirm that it is in fact a game. I saw some conversation online of happening. Maybe it's just called, they're just calling it a story project, so it doesn't necessarily mean it's a game. He said no, it's a game and it's coming. So I fully believe that. The thing is what form, what shape does this take form in? Jesus, this is the most violent sneezes I've ever seen in my fucking life.
Violent, yep.
Most recently, we had God of War Ragnarok Valhalla, which was a little side mode within God of War Ragnarok. Took about 3 to 5 hours to complete, if my memory serves me correctly, in which it was sort of a roguelike mode that you were running around. Same mechanics, same combat, same gameplay as God of War Ragnarok. Gave you a little bit more extra story stuff that you could do. It was really, really good. It was really, really good. And
I still need to play it.
Oh, I hard recommend for anybody and everybody who's a fan of this series to play that, because it's dope. It's really, really dope. I don't think we're getting that. This sounds and feels a little bit bigger. This does feel like a standalone title. So now you got to start wondering, okay, in what sense? Is it like a DLC release to Ragnarok that you do have to pay for? Maybe it's that. Is it a standalone game that's a little smaller in size and scope, a la Spider-Man Miles Morales or an Uncharted Lost Legacy? Maybe.
You piece of fucking shit. I told you that last night. You stole what I was going to say.
Maybe. Hold on. This is not a competition. I'm down. I've got one more in here. I've got one more in the chamber here, and then we're going to go back and talk about all of it, right?
Yeah.
It could be that. Or is it something else entirely? In the sense of like a prequel game kind of connecting 3 and 2018, or is it something else with Atreus doing something in the Greek world, kind of identifying with himself? I'm curious. I have a little theory that I did steal from the internet. In the Kind of Funny spoiler cast, I believe his name is Eric Williams, who was the director of God of War Ragnarok, praised and has a lot of love for Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And so I'm curious with where we are with Metroidvanias right now in the industry, where like they're popular, but I wouldn't say that they're super oversaturated. Like we're not getting a whole lot of them, but we're getting some at a pretty substantial pace. Last year we got Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. Hollow Knight's out here doing the Hollow Knight stuff. We're supposed to be getting the new Hollow Knight at some point. And you're muted.
Did you see the recent news about that? I didn't mention during the piggyback.
There's some updated thing or whatever. That, something got updated. That's happened before.
It's the first time since 2019, as far as like Silk Song is concerned. So I think it's coming this year.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Fair enough.
At this point, wouldn't be surprised if it got canceled.
No, it's not getting canceled.
I'll believe it when I see it.
I guess we will.
The dev team behind Celeste was supposed to put out a game this year, and then they broke up and canceled the game. So, there's that. Off of things like Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, I think it would make sense that we get sort of that style of the game here. That director's really, really fond of that gameplay style. Here, go make your own in the world of God of War, and something like that. I think it'd be really fun to, like, be, I don't know, Kratos with maybe with the Blades of Chaos and running around a Metroidvania 2D world. And it kind of explains the backstory of how he got from Greek to the Norse mythology, and then most of it takes place in the Greek. Possible. I also think it's also just as possible that we were playing as Atreus. This is him kind of becoming Loki as his own person, and he's exploring his Greek side and sort of the history of his father and playing into that. I think that's a little weird, especially with how we left off the Greeks in God of War 3. Spoilers. It's not a good place to be. Very not good. The world ends. So I don't know how they would do that, but of course they can always take creative license and do whatever they want with that. Connor, where are you at with any of this?
Well, to piggyback off what you were just saying, as far as, Greece being destroyed, I think that would work into what exactly they are planning with Kratos, which is him becoming an actual, well, spoilers for those who haven't played Ragnarok, I guess. They basically set up how he's going to be a more traditional god, except a good one that people actually follow and worship and is deserving of that worship, as a redemption for Kratos. And I feel like that is going to tie into Greece, because in the newer games, he kind of talks about people that sometimes were in the original games, like, for example, the ship captain, or there is this, I think it was connected to this boss that you fight in one of the God of War games. I think he brings him up, how it was actually just a Greek, like a Spartan. It was the last Spartan.
Yes. Well, no, you're talking about that Greek warrior, and he tells a story at the end of 2018. That's not in the games.
Okay. Well,
that was
either
one
way,
that was invented for 18.
Either way, Kratos does have a lot of regret due to what he had done in Greece, and it would make sense that if he's going to become this new leader of a god, he would either try to include the people that are left on Greece who are, left devastated by Kratos' actions, or he'd make up for it in some way, since he is directly responsible for that. And, clearly as Kratos' journey has been going so far, he would want to take the chance to right his wrongs if possible. And I think it would be interesting to go into a question of redemption on whether you could be redeemed about something that you can't take back. Even if you're able to make amends for it, is that enough to compensate for the massive destruction that he caused in the events of 3? But as you were saying with the side scroller, the Metroidvania, that'd be a lot more of an interesting way to take it, since we're so often getting these God of War style games, big budgets, very cinematic. It looks super nice. A lot of mocap going on. You can skirt around that by still continuing the story of what God of War is going to be from here on out, because I don't think it's going to be I guess there is the chance it could be about his time in between 3 and getting to where he is in God of War 2018. That would be interesting, but I feel like most likely they would make it something new to tack on to all of this extra stuff that they're doing with Kratos and with Atreus. It's really just a question of which one would you play as. I think whatever, like God of War as it's going to continue, is going to still have Atreus and Kratos be the characters that you play as, but I think it would be beneficial to, like a Miles Morales game, to get Atreus more landed down on what kind of character he's going to be in. Because in Ragnarok, he's fun to control, but he's definitely only developed so much to where you play him in certain segments. He wouldn't be able to as effectively carry him through a whole game as you would, when you're playing with Kratos in Ragnarok or 2018. So I think they would benefit in the same way that they did with Miles Morales to, kind of hammer out what exactly is going to differentiate him between his counterpart, which I think is a lot easier in this sense, because Atreus is vastly different from a Miles Morales Spider-Man versus a Peter Parker Spider-Man. But to get back earlier to your point, I think it'd be, cool to do something that's not in the traditional God of War, way, whether it's a side scroller or a fucking puzzle game, I guess you could make a tactical game. You could go a lot of different ways with it, because it is just a side story, side project deal. And no one expects it to be exactly like God of War as it's been up until this point. And so you have a bit more room to wiggle.
Right. Yeah. And that's where I'm at. Like, it being a side project, to me, tells me that we're going to do something different. I don't think we are progressing Kratos' story in this side project. Like, I think we're going to not even see modern day Kratos, current Kratos, in this game really at all. Maybe like at the end as a buffer of like, all right, now we're going on an adventure or something like that, But I would guess that we don't see modern Kratos at all in this game, which puts me to because everything you said, Connor's great. that's a main game. That's the next game. That's the end of a trilogy. And I know they didn't go out when they started the 2018 thing thinking that they were going to do a trilogy. They've said that Ragnarok is the end of the Norse duology in that. So, maybe we jump to Egyptian myth, which is something that we know they played with in the beginning stages of producing 2018. Maybe we do come back to Greece and he redeems himself in Greece. That doesn't excite me so much. But again, all of this would be the next game, Or maybe he stays in Norse land and he creates a mythology of his own. I could see that very much as well. And just everything we've heard, everything we know about Norse mythology is just kind of pushed to the side. And we invent new tales, which I believe is actually how Norse mythology kind of works structurally. It's all based on interpretation and word of mouth and delivering, progressing the story forward and so forth. It's not like as set in stone as things like a Greek or an Egyptian mythology or any type of modern Western mythologies are also created. It's not as set in stone.
It's inherently baked into the idea that Ragnarok was going to come at some point, whereas I don't recall that ever being in Greek or Egyptian myth. I mean, of course, there's things that are like, there's
always an end of the world.
Yeah, there is. Like the chaos god Apophis, I believe his name is, giant snake that could devour the world. I don't know if there's a doomsday counter on that god, but I think Atreus is probably the path they would go with because, again, not only can you develop that character in terms of gameplay, but you can also do kind of, going back again to some non-traditional God of War game, him being able to turn into animals, you could play around with that a bit more and make it its own like unique style of game in exploring Atreus exploring his roots. Because obviously he's saying that it's set in Greece. We don't know that any more than we know that there's actually a side project coming out. But it makes sense. A lot of people have a lot of fondness for Greece in general, not even connected to the God of War franchise. But when you get into that, fans liked that setting. And since they don't really elaborate on it in some of the older games, and I'm saying this as someone who hasn't played them, I just know enough about them that they don't go into the real deep impacts of Kratos' choices at the end of 3 or over the course of 3. So, having Atreus get back to his roots in some way or form, and understand who Kratos is, because up until like the entire course of 2018 and Ragnarok, he's finding out who his father is, finding out that he's a god, finding out that he's from a different pantheon, finding out that he did all of these horrible things. And that's one thing, but it's another thing to actually see it and fight enemies that maybe associate Atreus with Kratos and want to do him harm, just by extension to do Kratos harm. That seems like a more interesting way to return back to the Greece mainland, while still being a side project.
So I'm wondering, stick with me here. I'm writing in real time here. All right. So I'm wondering if, yes, Atreus is our main guy, probably we switch up gameplay in a dramatic way and it's just a completely different type of game here. I would assume I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. I was thinking about the idea of sort of a prequel game where we show the connection of 3 to 2018. That's not a very interesting question to me. Personally, and I get the feeling that Santa Monica kind of feels that way too, because they would have answered it if they found the question interesting by now, and they have just chosen not to. But it is a question that fans want to know. How did he get here? That's a question that the fans want to know. So I'm almost curious if we do a game where you play as Atreus, he somehow discovers a way to travel to the Greek lands. And in Ragnarok, we play with time, like a lot. Like we play with time. I don't 100% remember the mechanics of all the time traveling that happens, but the World Serpent, for example, travels back in time, gets zapped out of his time and put somewhere else. And then I think there's a couple of other instances of some time travel-y stuff happening, or at least like the conversation of time travel happening. So I'm almost curious if, Connor, stick with me, we are Atreus and either in sections of the game or the game in its entirety, I don't know, we, as Atreus, are traveling Greek ruins, and there are sections of the games where we travel back in time to before Kratos does all the damage, and Kratos is sort of a enemy that we have to run away from. He doesn't know. but he's just this rage monster that you can't really do anything to because he's the god of war, and Atreus is Atreus, and so it's just these moments of like running. Well, we got to get away, and Atreus witnesses the atrocities firsthand, and so
Then,
now
yeah.
we get sort of a double dip of really cool information that the fans want to know. How did Kratos get here? Probably, at the end of the game, that question is answered. We get some narrative progression in the sense of Atreus growing, maturing, understanding his own history better. And then we get another dip of nostalgia. This is the moment Kratos attacks Olympus with the Titans. This is the moment where Kratos rides the giant horse things in God of War 2.
Yeah.
This is the moment where Kratos
Fights Ares.
takes a woman and sticks her in a gear and
Ah,
crushes her, and or maybe Atreus jumps in and stops him or something like that, to save the woman's life. Like, and I don't know, a bunch of things, right? That all of these different moments and things can happen, and in that there's just moments where we also get the joy as the player to be on the other side of things, which I don't believe we've had before.
No.
To my knowledge, we've always been in Kratos' shoes outside of the moments in Ragnarok.
I think one of the technical exceptions is in one of those spin-off games, the one with the Fates. The final fight is you trying to stop them from making Kratos die, and it takes place during the fight against Ares. Like, I think their boss fight happens
Weird.
with the backdrop of that occurring. I think so. I can't remember.
I don't know. That's another nostalgia moment of the battle with Ares. That we could do, the opening of God of War 2, all the highlights that we could kind of visit and see. And, the opening of God of War 2 is iconic. Several other set piecey moments in 2 is iconic. Most of 3 has a bunch of really cool moments that you could pull from to be like, oh, yeah, I remember this. And we get our member berries, we get our story progression, and we get some questions answered. And I think it kind of just hits all the notes. That would be cool. I think something like that.
And the driving point here is that you can do a lot with this. And Santa
100%.
Monica, I'm assuming Santa Monica would be in charge of it. They could outsource it to some other developer. I mean, they got Sony behind them, so they got a lot of studios under their belt.
They're big enough. We know that they work on multiple projects at one time. We know there's a Cory Barlog game in the works right now that I think it's a new IP. It's not a God of War game. I think it's going to be a while before we get a new full-fledged AAA, all the bells and whistles God of War. It's going to be a while until we double back to that. So here's a little appetizer, something that can kind of hold us over for a few more years.
Indeed. It'll be interesting to see if it actually comes into fruition in the first place. I'll double pretty far back to the whole entire thing about the collections real quick. The remaster collection.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think that it's not going to happen because in the tweet he's talking about, he says it's never been confirmed. He's never been told that's in the process of being made. And it seems like it's just ripe for being announced at the 20th anniversary that just occurred. Like it just works, it's the anniversary. Here's all the games that you can play. And that's something that fans definitely want. It makes sense that they'd want to do a remaster collection. I just feel like they would have announced it now, if not at all.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I totally see that. I do believe that this collection exists in some form or another, and they're holding it in their cards for whatever reason. Whenever they need a little bit more money in their pocket, they'll put it out. Or maybe it's like currently in development right now. I don't know. I don't know. I think it just makes too much sense. Kratos has too much PlayStation weight, too much PlayStation history in him.
Yep.
I mean, you're talking 4 generations of PlayStation have been, semi-centered around Kratos. A little less with the PlayStation 3 generation, but 2, 4, and 5 definitely have had Kratos be front and center.
Yeah.
So I think it's only a matter of time before we see a collection of that exist. Now, is it going to happen in the next year or two? I don't know. Maybe not. But by 2030, which would be the 25th anniversary, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see.
Indeed. Something else that might be interesting to see or horrifying to see, as we have discovered time and time again, Connor, we're going to move on to topic number 2, your first penny of the day. Take it away, my friend.
Yes, Microsoft to continue film and TV adaptations of Xbox games. Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer declared the company's intent to keep adapting video games into film and television projects after, quote, learning and growing, end quote, from past forays into the medium. Speaking with Variety in preparation for the release of the Minecraft movie, Spencer touched on how recent experiences in television adaptations of both Fallout and Halo has led to the company being more confident in taking on similar projects in the future. Quote, we learned from doing Halo. We learned from doing Fallout, Spencer said. So all of these build on themselves, and obviously we'll have a couple that miss. But what I'd say to the Xbox community that likes this work is, quote, is you're going to see more because we're gaining confidence and we're learning through this, end quote. Halo premiered in March of 2022, and despite being well received by critics, audience reviews were lukewarm, with fans of the franchise particularly being particularly dissatisfied with the show's direction and poor depiction of the main character, Master Chief. Despite financial success and Season 2's improved reception, Paramount announced the cancellation of the planned third season, in large part due to the massive budget of the show, with Season 1 reportedly costing $200 million to create. Yeah, the show would find success on Netflix, following its removal from Paramount Plus, with Season 1 achieving 32.1 million hours watched despite being unavailable in the United States. Subsequently, Microsoft's TV adaptation of the Fallout franchise began streaming on April 10th, 2024, reaching 65 million viewers in the first 16 days of its release, making it the second biggest show on Prime Video behind Lord of the Rings: The Rings of Power. The show would go on to reach 100 million viewers by October 2nd, with positive reviews from critics and general audiences, attributing to the now ongoing filming of Season 2. And, yeah, so clearly there's a lot of things that Microsoft and by extension Xbox has to adapt. Clearly the Minecraft movie is yet to be released. And I don't think whether that's going to be successful or a failure is going to change the trajectory that they're clearly on. And that's to say that the Minecraft movie is going to make tons and tons of money. Is it going to be a good movie? Probably not. But it'll make money. I have no doubt it's going to make a lot of money. You're calling it, and I'm calling it now. I could be one of those idiots that, it comes out and it's like, it had one of the weakest box office receptions of the year. But it's Minecraft, it's Jack Black, and it's been pushed to high heaven that even people that don't think it's going to be good want to see it, to see what is the Minecraft movie.
That is a movie that should cross $1 billion in box office revenue. I don't think it will.
Yeah, because the quality doesn't appear all that great, which is the thing about these film and TV adaptations. They're mixed. Halo, everything I saw from Halo looks like it was something that I didn't want to watch. Every single time I was privy to some clip of the week, I just thought to myself, damn, I'm happy I never wasted time watching this show. Conversely, though, Fallout is very interesting. I've only heard amazing things about it. It's the clips that I have seen have got some amazing performances from Ella Purnell, Kyle MacLachlan, and Walton Goggins. So as many of these adaptations go, there's not just a guaranteed success. It matters what exactly you're adapting. I mean, really, I'm talking about the content of what you're adapting, the people who are working on it, and how much the studio decides to fuck things over. And it seems like with Xbox, you could really get either or. Obviously, I think of things like Redfall, which seemingly was the fault of Xbox not really giving Arcane Studios a clear direction in making a game that they were used to. And that led to that game being very poorly received. And so you can see the continuation of that philosophy when it comes to their TV and films. But do you have any idea of what they would try to do? Because Halo's obviously the big one.
Yeah, Halo again. I don't know. Yeah, I could see it just because that IP is Xbox's strongest, so it would totally make sense. If we did a Halo movie, I think that's the better way to go for that instead of a series, personally. Just making an action film that is a pretty simple 2 hours. We're in, we're out. We understand the stakes really quickly. Don't do any grand universe encapsulating narratives. I think the first game works so well because it doesn't actually give you a lot of lore. I think a lot of these Halo nerds need to understand that lore is not what needs to be made here in Halo. It needs to be a fun action experience first.
Well, I think
and the problem is that the lore is like always the focus, and it shouldn't be. Now, I'm not saying go off the beaten path and create something new entirely, like obviously the show on Paramount Plus did that failed dramatically. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the urge is to always go, okay, Master Chief's a Spartan. He's a child who's been kidnapped and his parents think he's dead, and now he's been experimented on and turned into a super soul. No. Halsey, AIs, Spartan 1, Spartan 2s, yada yada. No, none of that. Covenant, they've got this hierarchy of religious structure and stuff like that. Maybe a little bit, but I don't need to be hearing prophet of truth, prophet of this, prophet of that. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Simply, I think you can very easily create a fun action movie a la Predator with Halo, the Halo 1 story, where Chief crash lands on this thing. He doesn't know where he is. He's got to survive. Enemy aliens are everywhere, and there's this monstrous zombie-like creature entity that is this big threat, and we got to figure it out. And and yes, we crash on the Halo ring, and it turns out to be a giant weapon and so forth, and that's how we eliminate the threat. But don't make it about the Halo ring. Don't make it about the Forerunners. Don't make it about all of this ancient history of 343 Guilty Spark. Don't do that. Keep it simple, stupid. That's how you get Halo to work, in my opinion.
No, that seems incredibly reasonable. That's what people would. You're talking about fans like they want lore. I think fans would just want that too. Just have what is Halo, right? It's very simple. It's bare bones. Yeah. It's just a big area for you to play around with fun, cool set pieces or action sequences and whatnot. Yes,
but I think fans get caught up and they want their history. They want their deep lore. They want to be acknowledged for all these things. That's not how Halo started. Halo started with, you got enemy aliens. That's all you know. There's bad guys. They're called the Covenant. And then later you meet a robot, and the robot's like, oh yeah, I'm here. We got to activate the Halo ring. And it turns out he's a liar. And then there's this flood thing. That's all you know. That's the only thing you know about it. You're running from something that happened at Reach. I don't even think you should say the word Reach. Don't say it. Keep it simple, stupid. That's how you get Halo to work.
I think that, most of because I didn't mention how fan reaction was not liked, and certainly lore had a part in that. I think it was more centered around Master Chief being this, being not Master Chief. Obviously they had this big romance subplot that was tied in with a human, not even an alien. But you are right. There are way too many people for these kinds of things. Fallout as well, who would just say, like, if it's not this certain way, it's not going to be good.
I mean, you're one of them.
I am.
You were wrong.
I'm one of them in terms of one aspect, and I think I'll be vindicated eventually, but we'll see. But Elder Scrolls, right? I think that's a lock-in for what they would do next, especially because Fallout is so intrinsically linked to Elder Scrolls, and it's done successful.
Maybe, and what do you do?
The same. Well, what would you do with Fallout? You just do this unique story set in that universe that could, you can draw on lore with Skyrim, because Skyrim has tons of cool lore that allow for you to play around with shit. Like, for example, the ancient civilization of those dwarves that disappeared. There's not a lot of info on them, so diving into this kind of like adventure, mystery, investigatory, narrative surrounding an ancient race of beings, you can still play within the confines of Elder Scrolls lore, but one that allows you to just do whatever you want and do a lot of interesting story writing, while also, of course, having fighting, because people like action, and these Fallout games and Elder Scrolls games, they got a lot of that. And I don't think the Fallout show is very well known for having tons of battle sequences, which is why I think it would make sense that you can do more of a, maybe a mystery angle or something, to make a good Elder Scrolls story, because there's not many of those out there.
I just think Elder Scrolls so quickly, I just see budgets inflating so fast as we get CGI dragons and monsters and giant spiders involved. You know what I'm saying? So and spells and all these things involved and so forth. So I struggle to conceptualize what that looks like, but I'm not saying it can't be done.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think of Fallout, because they have a lot of those kinds of things, but when I haven't seen a lot of that depicted in the show. I've seen some of the famous creatures pop up, like irradiated bears and whatnot, but it seems like I'll take Phil Spencer at his word, they kind of learned from Halo, where they clearly spent a lot on it, that maybe you should tone back how much you're spending on it and focus more just on quality that doesn't rely on massive CG or special effects and whatnot. But then again, that we kind of have to accept that they did learn and grow. When it comes from companies, you can only, that's just what they'll always say, regardless of whether it's true or not.
And I mean, you can always start small and build, and if it catches, then you can start getting that budget up. Look at how Game of Thrones escalated.
Yes,
some of those sets and some of those costumes looked a little budget in season 1, but by the time you get to season 4, 5, 6, and it's the biggest thing in the world, then you can start having these big CGI dragons. You can start having crowds of 1,000 people running away, or big battle of the bastard scenes and stuff like that. Elder Scrolls could adapt that way, but you have to get the basics right. The problem with Elder Scrolls, it's a more interesting world than it is a character journey. Now that does give you the freedom to create your own character journey, which would be cool. And then again, you're battling things like, there's a bunch of Elder Scrolls nerds out there who really care about that lore. It's a smaller contingent than people who care about Halo lore. But they do exist. So it's still a balance that you have to meet. But I also wonder, does Elder Scrolls, from a visual standpoint, is it striking enough to create a universe around? Because it's kind of just generic fantasy. It's just done on a very grand level, and the uniqueness of what Elder Scrolls is that it was just a video game, and you could role play within that video game.
So your original proposition was, to repeat it, it's not a character journey. It's
who are the characters of an Elder Scrolls game? I mean, you say the same thing about a Fallout, and they made it work. So, of course, there are ways to make it work. I just don't know how. Fallout has a great visual style to it. It's post-apocalyptic, but it's got a very unique, there's iconography in that world that makes it Fallout, right?
Yeah, melding of Cold War era technology and future technology.
Yeah, I mean, the Vault-Tec suits and the Pit Boys and the big war machine suits that I forget what those are called.
Power armor.
Power armor, the big power armors, the Death Claws, which I don't think we've seen a Death Claw yet, but, when it comes around, that's going to be a big thing. The Vaults, the actual, Pit Boy animated cartoon character. All of those things are striking and create its own universe. What is that for Elder Scrolls? I struggle to point to a thing and say that's Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, I just think they would
that world.
Which is why I think they would, which is the biggest issue in doing it. But the fact that it's Elder Scrolls, maybe they'll even name it Skyrim, since that's the more predominant one. They'll have it take place there. It just seems like you already got, like with the Minecraft movie, a ton of people that'll just go see it based off interest alone. And if you have the goodwill from Fallout and you make it look interesting, people look at it and go, this show has some sauce to it. I think you'll get, you could get similar numbers like with Fallout, getting 100 million viewers. Because when people see that, when the executives see that, I can't help but think they immediately have dollar signs roll up in their eyes, and they want more of that. And they want to recreate that as best they can. And Elder Scrolls seems the clearest path to do so.
I don't see an Elder Scrolls fan base of any sort. And I understand the significance of Elder Scrolls when I say this. I don't see Elder Scrolls as an IP that has a significant enough buy-in fan base that a bunch of people are going to be showing up day one.
Mm-hmm.
It to me reads as, oh, this is a cool fantasy show. Come check this out. It's not like, I mean, Minecraft is like fucking bigger than Lego at this point, right? Like it's the biggest fucking IP in the world. So there's gonna be, it's gonna be like $700 million box office, whatever. Just because it's Minecraft and it's Jack Black, right? But the quality of that is going to be so low that it's going to eventually hold it back from being anything more than that. I mean, it was this specifically. This is just adaptations, right? So we're not even talking like live action stuff. I don't understand why I don't understand why Minecraft is not a kids' TV show.
It does not make sense at all. But
why do we not have weekly adventures with Steve and the gang? And it's an animated it looks like the game with a little bit more like maybe a little bit more chibiness to it to like and it's Steve and the gang learning how to share, and we have to share our iron together to achieve what we want, or like share some cobblestone to build the big castle that we want to play in, and we can all be friends. Like, why are we not having that from Minecraft? Why are we getting this weird live action CG movie? That this is a missed opportunity in my eyes.
Which is why I think when you're like angling for the creative aspect of why you would make an Elder Scrolls show, why would you do the Minecraft movie the way you did, these decisions aren't made by those creatives, I don't feel. First and foremost, it's like someone in those higher office says, I want a Minecraft movie. Make it have big name actors.
Yeah, and we want to see
Jason
the thing.
Momoa.
But I mean, like, we now live in a post Mario movie world.
Yeah.
Like, not that I think like the Mario movie like changed the world or anything, but it was a very, very successful movie. It was mostly well received, and and we still had characters like Jack Black in it, and made a splash. That Minecraft movie was in development before that Mario movie came out. So like decisions were being made that should not have been made already. Hi, my little Ashoka. Hi, baby. Anyways. She's we don't have her roaming around while we're recording, so it's fun to see her on the show. My dog has popped into view for audio listeners. I mean, what else does Xbox have? Gears of War, but I kind of feel like we as a society are kind of past that, but like, I mean, there's still ways to make it work. You could still make it really, really good, but like just sort of the bro shootery vibes of Gears of War. I don't know if anybody's like super excited about that idea.
No, it's definitely one of their next biggest titles they would base an adaptation off. But like you just said, it's not. They also seem to have a lot more Gears of War projects in the work, whereas people are starved for Elder Scrolls. Yeah. I'm trying to think of other things beyond that.
I think if the Perfect Dark game is a hit, there's definitely a case to be made that Perfect Dark might get a little yes. like a cool like Jack Ryan level Amazon show. The Jack Ryan show with The Office, The Office, and Quiet Place. Wow, I literally was listening to a podcast today that said.
Holy shit! Yeah, wait, he's involved in the Reacher show. Wait,
Jack Ryan, Jack Reacher, Jack Ryan. Yeah, he's the guy. He's Jack.
Oh shit! Yes, they have 2 Reacher shows.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think Perfect Dark could kind of fit into that angle. Splinter Cell? No, that's a Ubisoft thing.
I'm looking at things right now.
Vibes. Perfect Dark gives Splinter Cell vibes.
Yeah, I just don't think. Again, these decisions are. Ooh. Yeah, I mean,
Halo.
I feel like they'd be more easily able to make other adaptations before. Well,
Doom is so video game.
It's so video. It's
that's just not an IP that I think really works.
Dishonored. I cannot think of it. I think at this point it's just like these are all good ideas.
Oh yeah,
it's gonna be Elder Scrolls. I really cannot see beyond that now.
I don't. Because what does that show? I mean, and again, yeah, you could say that about Fallout, but like Fallout at least has the iconography to like you can point and identify and be like, oh yay! Like Elder Scrolls to me, how do you differentiate yourself from Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon and Lord of the Rings? You can't.
Well, you can separate yourself from the Game of Thrones and such by having more of that fantasy element to it, whereas Game of Thrones is more. I understand it has fantasy to it, but it's definitely not the bulk of it. The big question is how you're going to differentiate between Lord of the Rings, because as general audiences are concerned, it's going to be very similar. Even when you include the other races that exist in Elder Scrolls, it's not going to have the same impact.
My thought goes to you gotta be a little tongue in cheek with it, right? You gotta have a little bit more fun with it than like because fantasy is always super serious. We're casting magic and dealing with emperors and kings and lords, and people are dying. Your Game of Thrones and your Lord of the Rings is very serious in tone, right? But the most memorable quest in Skyrim to me is to get you're going to assassinate the emperor, and to get close to the emperor, you have to dress up as a chef and
Yeah.
pass a cooking test to serve the emperor poison food or whatever. Like, that's fun. Can we play with that? That's a level of like storytelling and writing that Bethesda is known for, and you see it in Fallout, and I think that's probably why Fallout succeeded without me seeing the show. So I don't actually know if Fallout went that way, but I assume it did.
Yeah, having fun with it really helps. I mean, I think of the recent Dungeons and Dragons.
That's a great example, Connor.
Yeah.
Oh.
Did you see it?
No.
Yeah, it's just a fun time. It's very entertaining.
Yeah, that's a great point to piece of what I'm talking about, of how we can make Elder Scrolls fun.
Yes, exactly. And clearly it's not built it's not based around a D&D game, which is what the movie clearly was going for. The Dungeons and Dragons one, that is. But you could just replicate that with Skyrim. I mean, as I said before, you have all of these different races where, even though it may not be distinguishable from other fantasy properties, you can at least have an interesting main cast that's comprised of, like, you got the Imperial and the Nord, and the Nord's races against the Elves on the team or whatever the hell, and fun stuff can be played around with, even without, like, as long as you know what Elder Scrolls entails, you can make it marketable to the person who doesn't know what Elder Scrolls is. But yeah, we will. I'm looking forward to this, Tavin. I'm looking so forward to this.
We'll see. I think we'll have to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
What is our end product here? But moving on, Connor, away from movies and then back to video games here. We are going into our third topic of the day. My second penny. Multiple companies partner with the ESA to launch the Accessible Games Initiative. Remember, you can read all of our articles that we read on the show over at TwoPennyGames.substack.com. Connor Elliott himself, right here, this guy, writes them every week. So go ahead, subscribe to our Substack, TwoPennyGamesNews.substack.com. Link is in the description down below. The Entertainment Software Association partners with Nintendo of America, Microsoft, Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, and Google to establish the Accessible Games Initiative, AGI, a program focused on informing players of accessibility features in video games. Quote, tens of millions of Americans have a disability and often face barriers to experiencing the joy and connection that comes with playing video games, says ESA CEO and President Stanley Pierre Louis. Quote, we are immensely proud to announce the Accessible Games Initiative in partnership with industry leaders. The initiative demonstrates how impactful we can be when we work together in our industry-wide pursuit of helping more people experience the power of play. The ESA, the progenitors of E3, unveiled their initiative at the Game Developers Conference, GDC, this part... Let me take that one from the top. The ESA, the progenitors of E3, unveiled their initiative at the Game Developers Conference this past week, following its conception by the previously listed founding companies, in addition to Sony Interactive Entertainment, with companies like Riot Games, Warner Bros. Games, Amazon Games, and Square Enix pledging support for the program. The initiative will launch with 24 tags that designate what accessibility features a game contains, with the tags separated under 4 categories: auditory, gameplay, input, and visual features. Examples of the tags include playable without touch controls, chat, speech-to-text, and text-to-speech, save anytime, and narrated menus, to name a few. The tags will be listed on game product pages, digital storefronts, and digital catalogs, with other key facts such as the method and how tags were decided upon. Now, you got a bunch of other key facts here, Connor. Is it worth reading through these? Or should they go ahead and go to our Substack page themselves to go check out for more information?
Yeah, you know what? Do that.
Go do that. There we go. Now, this is great.
One of the things I will mention, yeah, it is great. They would also, I can't believe I forgot to do that. They would also put like a stamp on games if they're like part of this initiative. So it's another way to tell when but like you said, great. It's been a long time coming that something like this hasn't been around. But of course, we've only seen a lot of innovations in accessibility happen past 5 years or so.
Yeah.
That's a good number to go with.
Last of Us Part 2 was the big push.
Yes. And so these things aren't hard, clearly it's simple.
They require work.
Well, no, I mean, no, like this in particular, obviously accessibilities do, but what this is doing with notifying people of what disability features are in the game, do you need to do an initiative to do that? I wouldn't think so, but clearly it helps get everybody on board. And this was just unveiled recently, and I feel like a lot of other games will join on to it, since why not? You know,
Well, they got
most
all
of
the
them they
major
did.
publisher players in this, right? So, it makes sense that pretty much every AAA game that comes out till the end of time is gonna be a part of this initiative, and you'll be able to see all of these great things on your storefront. More information for more players who are maybe looking for these things. They don't have to dive into different forums. They don't have to go to their favorite content creators. It's just right there on the on the front page, something that they can easily access. That's fantastic. I think it also unifies the conversation around accessibility. And it allows us to create a definitive language about accessibility, in the sense of like, these are the standards of what you should do if you when you put accessibility options in your games, which is always great. I'm sure it's very annoying for disabled players to jump from one game to the next and be like, all right, well, Marvel Rivals has this function for color blindness, but it works a little differently than how it works in Dragon Age, the Veilguard, which works a little differently than it works in Ghost of Tsushima, which works differently than how it works in Watch Dogs Legion, so on and so forth. And those options just keep pulling along, and so to sort of like unify this, let's share all of our information, let's pool all of our things. This is to me, this is the new generation's version of the creation of the ESRB, of like, we are standardizing what it means to have accessibility features in our game. These are the building blocks of that. This is us getting serious about that. This is us saying, hey, on every game, we should, just like how we did with different age ratings with the ESRB, on every game we should be like, hey, you got a problem? We have a way for you to solve it, And depending on the severity of your disability, you're still going to have to do a select amount of research. But if it's a lower class disability, you just know that, hey, I'm colorblind, and does this game have colorblind features? Yes, it does. Okay, I'm probably going to be okay.
I imagine it must be a pain.
Right?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, 100%. Like auto aiming in shooters. There's no way that works the same way in every game, and maybe it still won't. But now I'll at least know a general idea of like, okay, they are part of this initiative. They've got this stamp of approval that you're talking about, Connor, on it. That means I can expect a certain level of quality in my accessibility options that I won't be able to see in games past.
And I was thinking of the implementation of a scale, since I'm assuming some of these things will have details hammered out as they get responses from people who make use of the service of the initiative. But as you were saying this entire time, despite the fact that a game might have accessibility features, they might not be all that great or be inferior to, maybe what the standard is for some other game. I'm not going to get too much in the weeds since I don't use disability features, so I can't know them off the top of my head. But maybe the idea of having a scale, it might be hard to implement it, especially because some of these companies want to advertise their accessibility features as being very high quality. But the fact of the matter is, there are some that are worse than others, and sometimes there might be bad accessibility features. And some kind of maybe color coding scale or number or grade that it's given will allow players to know, in addition to what features they're going to have, how effective those features are in this game when it's put up to some kind of industry-wide standard. Obviously, there's a lot of weird details that come into doing something like this, but when the entire initiative is planned on allowing for people who need these accessibility features to know not only what they are, but whether they're they actually work and they're backed up by the I have to remember the name now, the Accessible Games Initiative, because I'm assuming there might be standards that are also put up later on where if you're going to have an accessibility feature, it needs to be of a certain level of quality and not just be one just to make it, more marketable to somebody who, otherwise wouldn't be able to play most other games due to their disability. I'm reaching around with a lot of things because obviously the very core of this is to try and get people to play as many games as possible, despite whatever issues they might have. And there has to be other ways to facilitate even easier recognition of what features a game might have.
100%. Yeah. So this is exciting. I hope this takes off, and I hope they find a great success. And it's great to see the ESA continuing to work in game space and find a new path forward for themselves now that E3 is kind of dead and gone. And so, yeah, I'm this is the level of like hope that like I still have for this industry of like, okay, but we're still doing right by somebody.
Yes, and someone's doing the work, and they're doing it good.
Thank God. So, yeah, very, very good. Connor, let's move on to our final topic of the day, which is your final penny of the day. I'm also very excited to get into this news, because this broke today.
It did. No, it broke a couple days ago.
Oh,
I was
okay.
surprised I wasn't seeing more news about it.
Okay, well, take it away.
Yes, video game workers form industry-wide union. An inclusive union called the United Video Game Workers, formed in partnership with Communication Workers of America, CWA, and the American Federation of Musicians, AFM, in response to sweeping layoffs within the industry. Quote, "Our mission is to take back our lives, our labor, and our passion from those who would treat us like replaceable cogs, to empower our fellow workers, to link up arms with the laid off, with the freelancer, with the disillusioned contractor, with the disenfranchised and the marginalized, with the workers laboring invisibly to keep this industry afloat," reads their mission statement. "We are going to create a game industry that works for us, one that nourishes its talent and invests in its future, rather than constantly seeking short-term profits. We are the ones that make the games, so we must be the ones that set the terms of how we work," end quote. The United Video Game Workers, CWA Local 9433, was announced at the Game Developer Conference, GDC, following an estimated 14,600 employees being laid off in 2024, 10,500 in 2023, and around 1,200 so far this year. A list of demands on the union website include advanced notice before layoffs, worker control over the use of AI, improved severance pay, and laid-off employees getting priority when hiring again. The union will be comprised of workers of all types across the industry in the United States and Canada, including contractors, freelancers, indie developers, workers who are currently unemployed, and workers who are organizing their workplaces. The union's dues will be calculated off 1% of a member's income, starting at $15 an hour. Quote, "The formation of United Video Game Workers, CWA, is an exciting next step in our union's work to help video game workers build power in their industry," said CWA President Claude Cummings Jr. As video game studios have consolidated, the workers whose creativity, dedication, and skill bring the games to life have become more an afterthought. They are subject to endless cycles of layoffs and rehiring as corporate executives pursue short-term profits at the expense of a sustainable future, end quote. The union differs from most as it's described as a direct joint union, alternatively known as a pre-majority union, and isn't recognized as a legal institution by any particular company. Rather, the eventual goal is to achieve a collective bargaining agreement to facilitate negotiations between workers and employees. Pre-majority unions are formed in instances where the workers in question are looking to rally together in the public sector, union-hostile private sectors, and in, quote, gig, end quote, positions. Quote, "The creation of this union was not done in isolation. It's a cumulative effort by the thousands of video game workers who have been fighting for years to redefine what it means to stand together and reclaim power in one of the largest and highest grossing industries on the globe," CWA's Senior Director of Organizing Tom Smith said. "These workers are taking a bold stand, joining together to build power for the workers behind the games we all know and love." So we've constantly talked about the layoffs, ad nauseum on this show. And it got to the point where usually we would cover a layoff story, maybe two every single week, and there was no end in sight other than a crash. So this is very uplifting to know that all of what's gone on hasn't come without repercussions for the companies that have laid off so many people. Obviously, this is not the most opportune way to form a union, but especially in the United States, you do what you need to do. And in a country that is so anti-union, with union members across the country dropping constantly, mainly due to anti-union activities by employers, Amazon being a notable one in that fight, clearly this has been a long time coming. I hope that it's going to be effective, because forming a union is the first important step to bargaining for more rights in industries like the gaming industry, but they might be ineffective. It might be filled with people who aren't actually incentivized to achieve wins for the employees in the games industry, but rather make a little buck on the side for themselves, or make connections for financial reasons later on down the line. Or, corruption can happen in these instances, and it's important that they don't, because this is such a pivotal moment in how games will go on to be developed in the future. Because I don't think beyond this, what's the other shot of there being widespread unionization within the industry? It's easy that this one allows for anybody to join it, which would then therefore allow easier union forming at other companies, but this has only been released a couple days ago, so we're gonna have to wait and see about how effective it's actually going to be.
Yeah, the key factor here is widespread adoption. That's what we need. We need as many members as possible to join up, and that's a bit of a double-edged sword for a lot of people. There's a risk in joining a union in this industry right now that is not unionized. You can be sort of behind the scenes punished for joining a union or doing these things, or there are some people who believe that unionizing would tie an arm behind our back and not allow us to move in certain ways. Well, clearly the ways we're moving right now isn't helping us right now, so we need to figure out a way to protect ourselves. I think everybody's for the most part on the same page about that, is we do need to figure out a way how we can protect ourselves better. It's the how we do so that can be debated in some circles. You and I, Connor, are agreed that this industry needs to unionize because there's, in my opinion, other than maybe the music industry, there is not an entertainment medium that treats its workers as poorly as the video game industry does. Other than maybe the music industry. And so, yeah, it's exciting. It's hopeful. But as you said, Connor, this is a story that has not been covered that greatly. And now part of that is because a lot of these news sites are for profit. So, this is not a story. This is not a sexy story. This is not a story that, is going to get a lot of clicks, especially because it doesn't really have an end in mind, or it doesn't have an end thing that you can read and understand what that means. It's very lawyery
ongoing fight.
And it's a step forward. It's not a conclusion. It doesn't have a conclusion to it. So it's a little tricky in that ways. So right now it's hopefully, I assume you're going to break this out a little bit, Connor. Actually, I'm assigning you to break this out. So hopefully, maybe if it can circulate in the right things, hey, if you didn't know this is happening and you work in the industry, hey, maybe you want to look at this. Maybe you want to get in contact with somebody who is connected to this, or maybe you want to ask around and see if anybody else is getting behind this. Is this the push?
And quite frankly, that push really hinges on the developers joining in, because this is entirely, obviously it's a formative thing from a variety of people that work in the industry who have seen all of the problems that it's had and wanted to find a solution. But you need a vast bulk of developers to join in, because if this union was to decide one day, because anybody can join, I don't even think you need to pay dues. I might be wrong about that. You might need to, but point is, if you had, let's say, throw out a fucking number, Tavin, 15,000, right, around the amount that were laid off in 2024, decided, who were a part of this union, said, okay, you know what, this has gone on too long, we're going to go on strike. The more power you have as a collective, the more they can't just wipe that off to the side. Because obviously, if you were at Riot Games and 50 workers were like, you know what, fuck this, we're not gonna work ridiculously long hours, we're not gonna just have our jobs cut randomly, we're not going to work. They could just say, okay, and then do the typical union breaking practices. Of course, have a vote within the company itself. Say, hey, you guys want to unionize, but have a lot of basically decentivizing reasons for why they should vote for it, to end up them saying no, and and they'll basically play the game of, well, see, we offered them if they wanted to unionize and they didn't want to. I brought up Amazon earlier. They were in, I believe, Arizona, required to redo elections because there was tampering that was going on at the voting boxes they were using at this particular facility. So there's always going to be underhanded tactics that are going to be used by these by these companies. And the best defense against that is just massive amounts of people all joining together to say, no, we're putting our foot down. You need to change the standards. So, when we talked about this in the past, I would always, unreasonably so, not actually unreasonably, but it's unfair that I would put the onus on the developers for the state of the industry, because people like you and me, we could talk about it. We could boycott a game here and there, but overall, the ball is not in our court. It's in the developer's court. And now that you have a structure that can allow you to, easily join together, and of course, this union would have an idea of how many people belong to it, and so they can have a greater understanding of, okay, now's the time for a strike. Now's the time to leverage all of the support that we have behind our union. But you need that support in the first place, and I hope people find out about it. Like I said, this isn't really being covered all that much, and so random game developers probably have to use word of mouth to let people know hey, here's a way you could protect your job if you're worried like everybody else is.
And from what I hear, especially at events like GDC, they're pretty good about getting word out between themselves. So yeah, again, there's a huge risk in involving this. It puts your family at risk. So I understand why someone would want to play it safe. But we all see the injustice that's going on in this industry. We all see all of the talent that we're losing, all of the lives that are being affected by this. And, everyone has to balance the question for themselves and make that choice for themselves. But ideally, one, it would be working for the benefit of yourself and also just working for the benefit of everybody around you. Because you're right, 50 people at Riot Games isn't going to really do anything there. If 500 at Riot and then 2,000 at Xbox and then 7,000 at Nintendo or PlayStation or whatever, all strike at once. Well, that cripples a bunch of major publishers all at once, or cripples teams all at once, and things aren't working and moving in that. It's a very hard thing to do, and a strike doesn't solve everything. A strike is very, very dangerous for the workers, but it's a put your foot down thing. And at the end of the day, if there's no product, there's no way to recoup profit. But at the same time, if you don't work, you don't get money either. So, it's a very hard balance to walk, and it's not a pair of shoes that, I envy to be in. But it's one that I push everybody in this industry to kind of make the hard choice, because it might be the right one.
Yes, it's, the right decision is not always the easiest, as they say.
No. And Connor, we're going to leave it off at that. That is, of course, ladies and gentlemen, your episode of the Two Penny Games Cast, episode 244. I am, again, your host, Tavin Bothel. This here has been Connor Elliott. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Let us know down in the comments below how you feel about all of the topics and discussions that we've had today. And make sure you get your voice heard. Make sure you put in your 2 cents, and maybe we can bring it up and react to it next week. Until next time, have a great time. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. And Connor, say goodbye to the people.
See you later.